Today we're going to talk about Kahs and Gahs. These are a great diagnostic activity to determine if you can sense the back of your tongue. They are also a great exercise if the diagnostic activity revealed that you cannot sense the back of your tongue. The reason we care about the back of the tongue is because if we're trying to restore habitual tongue posture with your tongue at the roof of the mouth or the palate, the back is the behavior of the back of your tongue is going to determine significantly how much of the tongue is in the upper airway. So if this is the palate and that is the front and this is the tongue, we would want the front, the middle, and the back all elevated. If the back is still low, it's still going to be more in the upper airway. Now, I get a handful of people in the clinic who cannot actually sense the back of their tongue. So this is always a great place to start because it is incredibly difficult to coach yourself and or to have someone else coach you how to change your tongue behavior if you can't actually feel your tongue. So start here, determine if you can actually sense your tongue, and if you can, then I would not use this as an exercise and I would move on to something more challenging. If you cannot sense your tongue, we will turn this into an exercise. So the first thing is start with saying ka or ga. So ka, 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 ga, ga, ga. I do not want you to look at yourself while you're doing this. You could even close your eyes if that helps. And I want you to ask yourself, what is my tongue doing when I'm making the sound? I want you to pause the video here because I don't want my answers next to bias your answers. So go ahead and pause, answer that question, feel confident with your answer, and then start playing the video again. So what I hear clinically most frequently is there's three answers to this question. The first one is, I have no idea what my tongue was doing, and or my tongue was doing nothing. I would put those into the same bucket. That tells me you cannot actually sense or feel what the back of your tongue is doing. You are the people who would benefit from doing this as an exercise, and we'll circle back to how we would implement that at the end of the video. If your answer was, I felt the middle of my tongue touching the palate or the roof of the mouth when I made the sound, but the front was kind of dropping low. For the people who are answering that, I would say you can sense the back of your tongue, but we have a vocabulary mismatch. What you're calling the middle is what I'm calling the back. This can actually matter significantly because there are times when I have patients trying to get the front, the middle, and the back of the tongue up at rest, and they tell me that they can't breathe when they have their tongue there. And what I'm realizing is what they think is the back, I think is a portion of the tongue that's even further back on the tongue than what I would call the back. So in that scenario, they're kind of shoving the very root of the tongue into the soft palate and more into the upper airway. So I would say let's redefine back of the tongue or posterior tongue by whatever you're feeling touching, or whatever part of your tongue you're feeling touching the palate when you say a ka or a ga, that is now the back of your tongue. So when you're trying to restore front, middle, back of the tongue resting at the roof throughout the day, that is your reference point. You say ka, and it's like, okay, that's where the back is, and everything in front of the tongue should be at the roof. Now, you are someone, I would say, you don't need to do this exercise. I don't think it would be beneficial to you unless you feel like, okay, I just need to kind of recalibrate the back of the tongue, what I'm considering the back of the tongue in my mind. And you could do it occasionally, but I don't think it would be that beneficial from like a sensory or strengthening or anything like that of the tongue. You could do it more of a recalibration of vocabulary. Now, the third bucket of answers would be, I feel the back of my tongue touching the roof, the front and the middle drop low. So if this is the palate, this is the tongue, that's the front, you're feeling ka, ka, ka. You are correct. So we're on the same page in regards to vocabulary, and I'm certain that you can actually sense the back of your tongue. For you, the people who answered that way, you don't need to do this exercise. I don't think it would be beneficial to you from a sensory standpoint, and it certainly, from what I've seen clinically, there's no strengthening component of it. So I would move on to more difficult exercises if you are answering that way. Now, coming back to the people who could not sense their tongue, we are now going to turn this into an exercise. So it would be Kahs and Gahs. Ideally, and it depends on the person, excuse me, depends on the person, but likely 3 times a day. You're doing it about 30 times every set of the day. And when you're doing it, I would do it in front of the mirror about 50% of the time. And exaggerate your opening before you make the sound. So it would look like this: ka, 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 ka. And the reason for doing that is you'll be able to actually visualize what your tongue is doing. And the reason I want you to do it in front of the mirror is because I want your mind and I want your eyes to see what your tongue is actually doing. And as you're doing this and you're watching yourself, you're telling yourself, okay, you're starting to sense the back of your tongue now. If you do this for 1 to 2 weeks, in most scenarios, you're gonna have no problem sensing the back of your tongue touch the palate without looking. And you'll also have a better gauge of where the back of your tongue is throughout the day. And it will help you with your next oral motor exercises, because you can now sense the tongue and you can now control the behavior of it much more effectively. If you have any questions about Kahs or Gahs, please write them in the comment section below or find me at summerspt.com.